Hello and welcome to Frontrunner Motorsport. It's time for a new series on this channel, Carspiracy Theories. I put my QAnon hat on and look at some of motorsport's darkest conspiracies. Did Timo Glock help Lewis win the title in 2008? Did Bernie sabotage Mansell's tyre at Adelaide because he didn't want someone with a Brummie accent to win the championship? Was Ayrton Senna an alien from the planet Kasplar? We will dive deep into all the forgotten lore of motor racing past. We may even look at Crashgate in detail and pick it apart at some point. So sit back, put on your tin-foil baseball cap, and grab some questionable popcorn. This is Carspiracy Theories. We start with one of the lesser known, or at least most forgotten conspiracy theories out there. Did Pedro Rodriguez win the 1970 Belgian Grand Prix with an oversized engine? Let's look at the facts, shall we? Pedro Rodriguez was the first Mexican hero in Formula 1. His younger brother Ricardo Rodriguez was also a star in the making, and the pair even raced together for Ferrari in sports car events. Sadly, Ricardo was killed at the age of 20, racing a Rob Walker Lotus at the 1962 Mexican Grand Prix during practice. Pedro himself made his Formula 1 debut in 1963, spending his first few years in part-time drives for Lotus and the North American racing team in a customer Ferrari. In 1967, he would take his first win at South Africa in a Cooper, finishing the year 6th overall, his best finish in Formula 1. He'd spent the rest of his time in Formula 1 in various forms of BRMs, apart from a couple of races for Ferrari. He'd scored a few podiums in 1968 and finished 6th overall again, before bouncing around a few teams in 1969 and joining BRM again for 1970, for just his second full season of Formula 1. He'd score points at various races, but none came close to the 1970 Belgian Grand Prix, where Pedro Rodriguez took his second and final Grand Prix victory. So why was the legitimacy of this win ever questioned? Even though Pedro Rodriguez only ever won 2 Grand Prix 3 years apart, he was clearly good enough. It was just a case of nailing a steady race seat. He was also a Le Mans winner in 1968 with Jules Bianchi's granduncle, Lucien Bianchi. So the Mexicans' talents are not to be doubted in any way. More, it was BRM. They had a troubled recent history. BRM had been a force to be reckoned with in the early and mid-60s, winning the Constructors' Championship in 1962 and finishing second for the next 3 years. However, before the Belgian Grand Prix of 1970, BRM had not taken a win since the opening round of 1966 with Jackie Stewart at the wheel. So, with a few years between wins, Pedro Rodriguez raised a few eyebrows on his way to victory at Spa. I guess the first thing to look at would be the engine. The BRM was supposed to run a 2.5 litre V12 engine, giving 465 brake horsepower. So what was Pedro presumed to be running at Spa? Well, it's hard to find anything concrete, but suggestions are of a 3.3 litre V12. Was that against the rules? Yes, it was, and some, namely Chris Amon, who finished second in a March, were suspicious of the speed of the BRM in a straight line. So let's side with Mr. Amon and look at the evidence for Pedro Rodriguez having an illegal engine aboard his car. The first piece of evidence is obviously that he won. Suspiciously, Pedro had an engine failure in practice and so was using a spare engine, that somehow and mysteriously propelled the Mexican to BRM's first winning years. Was this the bigger engine? Is Winnie the Pooh king of China? Also, chairman of BRM Lewis Stanley made claims of a BRM engine with 490 horsepower. Could he have mistakenly revealed the identity of the 3.3 litre V12? There is also tales of a former BRM engineer, Aubrey Wood, who would be part of Chris Amon's failed engine preparation business. He talked of the day BRM won at Spa with an oversized engine. Surely that itself is good enough to be considered case closed. I don't know if this is a good way to tell, but here is Pedro at Spa. Is there an engine expert who can tell by the noise? Very unlikely, I know. Now for the arguments against the conspiracy. An argument that Pedro Rodriguez and BRM just happened to win because they were best on that day. Firstly, Pedro only qualified in 6th. If he had a faster engine, surely he would have been a little bit higher at least. Maybe he sandbagged to hide his true speed for the race, but I doubt it. Also, the sources are very sketchy. People to have shared this rumour include Robin Hurd, one of the owners of the March team who BRM beat that day, and their driver Chris Amon. Chris would only finish a 2nd behind Pedro. That is in itself an argument for Pedro, but you can also understand why he might be a bit bitter. Chris Amon was a great driver, but never won a Grand Prix himself. This was as close as he got. And finally, Aubrey Wood, who worked with Amon later in life. He was a bitter ex-employee with a bad taste in his mouth when it came to BRM, not a reliable source. But I think one of the biggest arguments against this conspiracy is BRM's budget. They did not have enough money to have a special engine purely for Spa. They didn't win another race that year, so to have it in for one race would be a waste of resources. Also, it would have been a huge risk if they were caught. They were a team on a downward spiral. They could not afford to be punished for cheating. Plus, when you look at the field, most of the top drivers retired. Rindt, Brabham, Hill and Stewart did not make it to the end of the race, nor did Pedro's teammate Jackie Oliver. No, for me, this is case closed. There was no oversized engine in that BRM, just a very talented Mexican who just had fortune in his favour that day. Sadly, sunny days would not last long for this pairing. Pedro Rodriguez was killed a year later in a sports car race at the Norris Ring. BRM would take a couple more victories but would be dead and buried after 1977. But both BRM and Pedro Rodriguez are remembered fondly and definitely not as cheaters. Incidentally, Pedro Rodriguez's victory at Spa was the last for a Mexican driver for 50 years until Sergio Perez won for Racing Point at Sakhir in 2020. No one would dare question that victory. Or would they? Thank you for watching this new series. I hope Carspiracy theories will become a big part of the channel in the future with many more installments. If you have any favourite motor racing conspiracy theories you want me to cover, let me know down in the comments. Also, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of the other motorsport content coming out in 2023. Big thanks to my brother Lawrence for his excellent musical talents in making that intro. He is planning on releasing a longer version on his SoundCloud account and YouTube page. Both are called Lamnef and both are linked down below. Show your love to him by subscribing to both. Also, we have a shared YouTube channel called Dark Place where we play games and talk about movies and stuff. Link below as well. Lawrence just did a really funny review of the film Ninja Terminators. Well worth a watch.
So the baddies dress Machiko up for some reason and send a guy dressed as the newly dressed Machiko to fool Jag, and Machiko is tied up to a bomb, not dressed up at all. Really solid plan, guys. Fucking genius.
It's up to you, but if you don't want your friend Machiko blown to smithereens, you better give yourself up.
I'm going to die!
So with that, thank you for watching and have a good one.